topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio. Hello and welcome to It's Your Voice, the show that hosts enriching conversations in diversity. My name is Bahia Yaksan. I am a core alignment coach and a diversity trainer, as well as the host of this show. I am excited that today we're going to talk with a political activist, because it seems to be very relevant these days. This platform I established for marginalized voices and ideas to help increase access for more and more people to information, to points of views, to rights, to how to get involved. And I'll just mention, if anyone's interested in the things I teach or coach, you can go to my website, which is knowwhatyouvantcoaching.wordpress.com. And I'm excited to bring Ryan Berilla on. Tell me if I'm pronouncing your name correctly,
Pronounced
Ryan.
It perfect. First try. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure. Yeah.
I just want to add a little more information for the listeners and viewers about you. If you can bear with me while I talk about you. So you've been a volunteer activist who's done thousands of hours of political activism, especially concerning electoral politics, which is very interesting. You're particularly passionate about the work you do with Progressive Victory, which I was not familiar with at all until I met you at a candidate's sort of campaign event. And it's a political group that has found a lot of success through an experimental social media-based organization model, which I know you'll tell us about. And in 2026, you were saying the building blocks of a successful political movement are changing. They definitely are. And the goals of finding electoral success, building mutual aid, and growing community can all be solved in tandem. What a concept. And just you're emphasizing the importance of networking. In Progressive Victory's experimental model and how it might be the blueprint for future organizing is kind of what we're going to talk about. And that there's a new ethos to build movements in the moment. So, and I love that you added anti-essentialism, like it's preventing perfect from being the enemy of good. That's so important because nobody's perfect. We have to accept some things, but draw the line where those things really matter. So anyway, let's start. Tell us what I mean. I also will just start with a question you added. What are the most important qualities in a movement building candidate today? And I know you have a criteria for candidates that you'll endorse. So where would you like to begin?
We could begin anywhere. I would say just my personal story, and then we can jump from there into more general talking about Progressive Victory itself, or what I think will be the general strategy for political movements of any kind in the future. And that doesn't just mean electoral campaigns. That can mean, a mutual aid network or something like that. But I know for me, I was super passionate about politics. I studied poli-sci at UC Berkeley, and then I got this neurological illness while I was still a student at Berkeley that prevented me from actually going down politics as a career path or law as a career path. But as my neurological illness kind of healed, and then Trump got elected the second time, and I now, after having like a disability for a long time, I had been spending a lot of time on the internet, and I could see how this rhetoric had just evolved out of the ether, this kind of like alt-right kind of just like culture that just surged through all these different like platforms like Instagram and Twitter. And it's like, all right, so how do we combat this? This is scary. This is dangerous. I need to do something. So after Trump got elected the second time, I got like really serious into like activism. I joined a mutual aid group. I joined Indivisible. I joined my local Democratic Party chapter. And I got a lot of cool experiences from those, and I got a lot of cool things done with those groups, but something felt missing. Like it felt like these groups had a huge blind spot to the changes in politics and political organizing that was happening like right before our eyes. If you were spending any time talking to young people or any time online, like you could tell that like the kind of like the strategies that were effective in the 1990s and the early 2000s were no longer going to be the strategies of the 2020s. And so I was very fortunate to come across Progressive Victory. And I have done a ton of work with them now. And I can say that like I'm thrilled that there's a political group that is trying to get the kind of work done that I wanted to see, that addressed the new era that we're in, where the internet is our culture and the internet is our place for meeting new people and organizing. It is our place to hang out. And so to see Progressive Victory like take advantage of that and then also turn that into a gigantic canvassing organization that just like last week did 105,000 phone calls in Colorado for the Julie Gonzalez Senate election and the Malat Quiros congressional election. Like that's insane. And so I think they're very effective. Are they perfect? No, because they are so experimental and they're made up of a lot of young people. But I can see that they're like willing to grow and adapt. And I think they have a lot of potential, and their model, if nothing else, is worth paying attention to.
So this is this what you mean by the title of the show is Political Movements Are Built Different?
Exactly. They're built different, you know? Like, I mean, 105,000 phone calls in 1 week, that is built different, you know? Like,
Wow.
Any questions? Like, I don't want to just.
I guess, well, you can go on, but this is like a super basic question, like how do you organize? How does Political Victory organize?
Progressive Victory is really interesting because it has this multifaceted model. When it was founded out of different like communities of different political influencers and live streamers, and they all kind of came together and formed a Discord. And if listeners aren't familiar, Discord is a program very similar to like Slack, or maybe if you've ever gone like onto the voice chats on Facebook, or there was Skype back when I was, in middle school, high school. Like it's kind of in that same ballpark. It's like if Facebook and Skype had a baby. And so all these different streaming communities hopped onto Discord, which at the time especially was not really used for professional stuff. It was mainly used for like video game or streaming communities, TV shows. And so they kind of like took that model of Discord and was like, hey, this is a great place to hang out with your friends and post funny stuff. And, but it's also really good at communicating with a lot of different people at once. And so Progressive Victory took Discord and its kind of community building apparatus and built a political organizing community around it. A political organizing community that keeps itself motivated through like a combination of those like influencer streamer connections and maintaining a actual community that's fun to be with and does fun things too, not just the political things. And so that kind of like sustains Progressive Victory into a like sustainable organization and movement that gets the kind of like volunteer work that it does. And yeah, on top of that too, like they do they engage in social media a lot. They engage in like new forms of canvassing, like text banking, etc. Although other orgs are doing that, that's not a Progressive Victory exclusive thing. But Progressive Victory too, compared to other more like I guess Discord based organizations, even non-political ones, it's also been moving towards doing like IRL or in real life events too, where like Progressive Victory encourages that its members meet up at a certain spot and just like hang out and play board games, or like hang out and go to the park, see a movie, like, and that also is like really crucial. Again, it's this multifaceted kind of like strategy. In the 2020s, we're like super online, right? Everybody is after the pandemic. And then a lot of people, especially young people, are really lacking in a community or like any kind of like large friend group, you know, a place to just hang out with people. And also they lack a direction. And they don't necessarily trust the kind of direction that might be given to them by like a, you know, super establishment or older like Democrat figure, you know, like they aren't going to be listening to Hakeem Jeffries on how to best organize or how to you know, phone bank or how to etc. That trust has been lost among young people. And so Progressive Victory kind of solves all of those problems: the trust, the community, the communication style, all at once. And it creates this big, robust network that of young people, you know, who are getting a lot done, and it's very cool to see.
Wow, young people are getting a lot done in various ways and various venues all across the country.
That's
So
true.
are there people who like organize regionally? Like, I mean, fun is very important for sure to keep people motivated, to keep people interested, but also in person is, like you said, so key because there was like we were just stuck, and I'm not sure we've actually recovered from all the isolation during the
No.
period of COVID, and we kind of I think forgot how to make friends. And it depends. I mean, it really depends. Some people are like right back out there, like, yee hi. But yeah, I mean, it's still really important to break isolation with human in-person contact.
Definitely. Yeah. And among like out of all the people that just got right back into the swing of things and are making friends just like they were before the pandemic, there's tons of people that like haven't yet, right? And are still trying to recover. And like there's people who never got that opportunity because they were like in high school during the pandemic, you know? So like yeah, that opportunity to be able to make friends with people who have like-minded interests and a like-minded worldview, like that's like invaluable, you know. And so yes, Progressive Victory does do region events, and it has a dedicated region lead for like all of like the metropolitan areas in the United States. I personally, as of this recording, am the Bay Area region lead for Progressive Victory. Or we've just gotten a new one too since the Bay Area is so big. But like last month, I did a big event in Berkeley at a board games cafe. And you know, politics came up, right? Because like we're all politically motivated people, we're all very, but like for the most part, it was just us like playing Cards Against Humanity, and you know, me losing over and over again. But I mean, uh, it was a good time, and I think that kind of just like having fun with the people that you're organizing with, and not worrying about like what event you're going to do next for, or what canvas, you know, who your endorsement's going to go to. That's like crucial to avoid burnout, and to make that group of motivated like volunteers stay motivated and stay in tune with what's going on.
Well, how do you measure, like when you say young people? I imagine it's not exclusively young people, or correct me if I'm wrong. Like when you say young people, do you mean like certain generation, like other generations are not interested, or other generations are not accessing it because they're not on the same, like they're not on Discord, or they're not looking at social media?
No, that's a good question. I think that while like yeah, progressive victory does tend to be majority Zoomer, majority Gen Z, and you know, there are like younger millennials too who are a part. There's occasionally like a few people who are in their like 40s or 50s who are a part. But I would say the key difference in terms of the age isn't actually what year you were born in. It's like how connected are you to the like changes, the rapid changes in culture that are happening online and with majority younger people. A lot of people, even people my age, will just be tuning that out and being like, nah, you know, I'm not going to worry about what's going, you know, the kids these days are silly, you know, Zoomer, that's some Zoomer shit, or like that's some Gen Alpha. And it's like, you can't do that. The minute that you do that, you kind of like you're severing off like a cultural communication with those people, you know, and you're no longer part of like our cultural trajectory as a society. I think there's some people that do that unintentionally. They aren't like directly trying to just like be dismissive of younger people and what they find funny or what they find concerning. Uh, but I think that they happen to kind of become that way by not communicating enough with them, by not knowing the right places to communicate with them,
Mm-hmm.
and by like again not paying attention. And that's okay. Not everybody can, but progressive victory in particular, and I think a movement like this that uses the internet and influencers and social media like it does, that is going to rely on people who are tuned in to what the younger generations are doing and
Hmm.
what young people find interesting, concerning, hopeful, etc.
That's interesting. Um, another question I have is when we do talk about, I mean, you did mention that it is important to connect with like-minded people just to kind of validate that your your worldview. You're not alone. You're not the only
Right.
one. Other people share your concerns, but is there an effort to connect with people who are not like-minded to like cross the divide, or like I sort of teach a method on like how to communicate across differences, or how to interrupt in a constructive way, how to create belonging by pointing out that what I think is different from what you just said. And I wondered if you're willing to engage with me about that or not. I mean,
100%.
what do you do to like include people or reach out to people who are not necessarily what we would guess might be like-minded people?
um a- you have to learn to code switch in the same way that I feel like a lot of like generally older people are dismissive of like very online culture or
Mm-hmm.
like you know young culture. I think the like you know the reverse is also true, where young people aren't really giving old people the time of day, or especially like progressive older people that might not be in tune with what's going on Twitter, or what the latest meme on TikTok is, or whatever. Like they can still be a valuable ally. Again, you just have to kind of learn a little bit about where they're at and then learn how to talk with them. Because a lot of the times when people are like disagreeing, especially progressives, when they're disagreeing and they're coming from good faith, like it kind of it boils down to like a language communication bear. It's a breakdown in communication rather than an actual disagreement. Um, and so I do think that like for me personally, I have to learn like, okay, what's the best way to convey this point with this person? I think that they would agree with it, but like, I don't know, am I talking to this like person who is on Twitter, you know, 7 days a week? Or am I talking to this older organizer and indivisible? You know, maybe they would come to the same conclusion, but they'd go about it with different language. So for me, that's useful. I think I also think that just like getting connected for me personally, I was going to get to this eventually, but I think that like networking is so important for anything that you are trying to do politically. Like it doesn't matter if you are trying to run for office, or if you're trying to help somebody run for office, if you're trying to set up a food bank, organize a protest, doesn't matter. Whatever you're doing, like the more people that you know, especially like trusted people, the better. Those are different options. Like, because eventually you're gonna arrive at like something that you can't do. Maybe you don't have the money, you don't have the experience, you don't have the,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so having all those different options to pull from, being like, hey, I know it's been a while, but I really need help setting up this at this, or like that is like the bread and butter of getting anything done in politics. And so if you're interested in doing anything relating to politics, I would recommend that you try to expand your network. And you aren't going to be able to do it everywhere. All right. I'm a flawed person. The person listening to this, is probably not, perfect or doesn't get along with absolutely everybody. So like, and not every organization out there is perfect either. So if you reach out to an organization and you're like, I can't work with them, this is like, yeah, they're driving me crazy. That's valid. But barring that, try your best to make connections. And by doing that, you'll meet lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds, and you'll get better at talking with people from those backgrounds. I think Progressive Victory does a really good job at networking a key demographic that gets overlooked, which is like young people who are very online. And these people are very important because they are like young voters who will be voting for the next 70 years. And then they also are like shaping the language of how politics is being discussed and like modern day political movements. And so I like that Progressive Victory makes those people the core, that demographic, the core of their movement. This being said, Progressive Victory does not get along with everybody, almost famously so. I think it gets along with a lot of people who get overlooked, but it doesn't necessarily jive with some other parts of the left that don't have their ethos. Progressive Victory is able to do what it does because it has a very unique ethos of like not letting perfect be the enemy of good and being very pragmatic and being kind of down to earth, and not necessarily like hyper judging everything a person says. Actions speak louder than words. And a lot of the times, a lot of progressive movements can kind of get that way. I have personal experience multiple times of like, a progressive group not liking me because I was, I don't know, I didn't match their aesthetic, or I maybe made one mistake one time and that was it. I was the enemy to the working class, or I was an enemy to, marginalized people. And it's like, okay, like we need to be forgiving. We need to be, pragmatic. And that's how Progressive Victory is able to get a broad coalition of those, very online young people and able to have them do such a diversity of things. If we had that mentality of like, no, we have to be super uber perfect all the time, then we wouldn't be able to do like massive phone banking operations and in-person meetups and like a engaging online community and like interactions with politicians and influencers online that are entertaining. That just would not be possible without that ethos. And that's Progressive Victory's red line. Is like, those people who are very puritanical or are very essentialist with their ideas about like what progressivism looks like or what a progressive activist looks like that's not going to be somebody Progressive Victory is able to reach out to. But I think that Progressive Victory is open to working with people who might not fit that young, super duper online demographic if they're willing to adopt the pragmatic, non-essentialist ethos that allows like a lot of people to come together and focus on what's important and not get caught in the weeds of, little infractions or imperfections.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, when I think about, like the big tent, there are, I mean, in some ways, both parties are driving everybody crazy. No party's perfect, but I know one criticism I have of is kind of similar. Like we could get so much more done when we just. I'm not trying to like minimize what you just said, but like just find common ground and overlook what is not critical to the core values to helping like helping people, again, some of my beliefs, like have access to healthcare, have access to food stamps, things that are, have access to voting rights, And it's interesting because I keep wanting to use the word essential in a way that I think is different from what you're saying. Like when you say essentialism, in a way, I'm sort of equating your use of that word with like perfectionism,
Sort
or
of, yeah, because I'm
like
talking about moral
holding on
essentialism.
to. But
Yeah.
yeah, can you say like I like having definitions. Like say more about, because essential means different things to different people.
Right. I think essential means something having unchanging characteristics that kind of like determines how we should either approach, treat, go about that thing. And I think that essentialism can come in a lot of different forms. And if we're talking about politics, then that can come from like, oh, if you're I don't know, if you're from this country, that you're an imperialist and I won't collaborate with you. That's
Okay.
essentialism, right?
Okay.
Moral essentialism would be like, oh, you made that mistake or you worded that differently. Well, I'm sorry, that I cannot work with you. That's basically the same as like the people we're fighting against. That would be a moral essentialist, and that's kind of more what I was alluding to earlier. Right.
Okay. That helps. I think that it's really true that, yeah, that like both young people and online communities are, there's just it's a different world. It's like a parallel universe.
Mm-hmm.
And what I hear you saying is, could we like build bridges between the online world that maybe is not so crazy or whatever we think it is? Like, can we like overcome our judgments
Mm-hmm.
and connect to fight for, like, again, like my words, like common ground, like get really clear and get supportive and quit allowing others to divide us, because when we are divided we're conquered.
Mm-hmm. I think the problem is when we divide ourselves. If
Yeah.
like there are people who we're trying to organize with that have too strict of red lines, that's when like we can't actually form coalitions that are like, you know, I don't know, effective or long lasting.
Yeah.
Because like if one person will refuse to work with somebody on the basis of them supporting one candidate over another, or will refuse to work with somebody because like of their sense of humor, or refuse to work with somebody because of blah 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 blah, and that happens more and more, and it fractals out, then it will be impossible to make a progressive movement that is strong enough to last and for a long period of time combat the like neo-fascism that we're looking at right now. Like we have to have a robust, like, and what you're saying, like we have to be able to put aside our differences and work together. We aren't ever going to agree on everything, but we have to have the mentality of like wanting to compromise, be pragmatic,
Mm-hmm.
and not get hung up on the little details or little mistakes that we don't 100% agree with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate your emphasis on us kind of dividing ourselves, but I just want to say, I think underneath that is like uh, conditioning over decades, kind of in our kind of mainstream society, that we've internalized,
Mm-hmm.
like, and we're all still like super automatically categorized, and so we learn
Mm-hmm.
categories, and if we're not paying attention, and if we're not around other people who are helping us kind of think with awareness and compassion, we can get stuck, in what we think about other people and what we think about ourselves. So I think there's like not only that sort of internal, and I think sometimes it's easier to criticize like our like group, so to speak, than others, because we feel like, oh, we can't even talk to others, like forget about that, let me just try.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, actually, we're gonna stay stuck unless we really, like, whatever metaphor you want to use, like,
Right.
just all bring down walls, step out of our silos, invite people into our conversations.
I think the more of those walls that we're putting up, the more of those red lines that we're putting up, the more rigid we're getting. and the less capable of growth our movement is capable of. We have to be able to grow and adapt, especially grow. Like right now, like after 2024, we're seeing, the progressive movement is not growing. That's for sure. And so I think as progressives, we have to have that growth mindset, and that requires a new form of thinking that is not that less essentialist form of thinking that is not super prevalent yet on the left. And I would love to be able to see more progressives think more pragmatically. I think it's happening. I think that like that momentum is there, but I want to see more of it. And I want to see less gatekeeping. I want to see less, kind of in-group bullying, purity testing, and more pragmatism.
Pragmatism, yeah, practicalism. What, now let me hear your definition of progressive, because again, I mean, let me just preface it by saying it's so interesting because like years ago, like let's say Bernie Sanders was like saying radical, so-called oh, what a radical what do you mean universal health care? Like, and now thank God it's more like, oh my God, this is terrible when people don't have health care. And in fact, currently at the moment, more and more people are actually losing access to health care. And so I think more and more of the population is appreciating, like, oh my God, that so makes sense. And what happens if my family doesn't have it, or my neighbor's family, or, so anyway, I just feel like, that it's becoming, I think, more clear because of all the people I interview and all the books I'm reading and all the conversation I'm having. It feels like it's becoming more clear that what's labeled as, radical is actually very pragmatic, makes sense. And being inclusive isn't like a left or right thing. It just means literally including people. It's not a partisan position.
Right.
It's like, should I have food, but you not have food? No, that's no. We should both have access to food, and our family should have access to healthcare. So I think the same thing still today. I think progressive right now means radical to parts of the world. And so how would you like listeners and viewers to think about, like, what do you think progressive means? And how would, just give us your definition and say what you want to say about it.
I think that progressive, when I say the word, right, and what's, with all political terminology, but especially for some reason, political terminology associated with the left, a lot of people use terms in a lot of different ways in different contexts, and it's very confusing. When I think progressive, I mainly am using it to kind of contrast against like the, conservative and I guess now neo-fascist movement that wants to like bring us back to an imagined past, or like, not really maintain rigid societal structures, especially like hierarchies. And I would say more like centrists and moderates that kind of just want to like keep things the way they are, or like go la 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 la, I'm not paying attention to what's happening in the world, and then like just magically, will back the Bill Clinton presidency, and I don't know like if either of those I align with. So I say progressive because to me, I'm looking forward. I'm looking to like improve the world, whether that be through the sciences, through like equality, through better quality of life, art, like there's tons of different ways in which we can see society change for the better. And I feel like a lot of the political movements that are opposed to progressives, or people who call themselves progressives, don't really want to see that improvement. But that's not necessarily like the only definition of progressivism that's valid.
Well, I appreciate it. I think also, like, when you think about the root word, it's like making progress.
Right.
Like I remember being like so surprised when I started getting involved politically, like in high school and college, that the idea of making progress was threatening. Like, wait a second, what does it mean? Wait, what's your definition? Like how do people not want things to get better? Like similar to you, like I equate it with like, I before he was a senator, I was involved with the campaign, the senatorial campaign for Al Gore
Mm-hmm.
in Tennessee,
Nice.
where I went to college, and that's where I learned about climate concerns, and people thought that he was crazy. Some people.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't, and and I sometimes think, wow, what if Al Gore had won the presidential election?
Mm-hmm.
How would the climate, would we have a much better situation than we do now regarding climate health? But anyway,
I'll keep that in mind if I find a time machine. We'll try to. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's not really useful to like dwell on what could have happened, because I
Mm-hmm.
want to make progress. And if you think about like I know more and more people are maybe possibly actually hopefully looking at the Constitution again, since I think what you're calling neo-Nazi, tell me if I'm wrong, is we're talking like the current administration is trying to take us backwards, which to me is the opposite of progress.
Right.
And losing again, disenfranchising voters who our citizens fought for and died for years, and then like things being repealed that were making progress,
Mm-hmm.
taking it backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like that's got to benefit just a really tiny minority of people who have millions and billions of dollars. Like I still like to believe that if people had more information about what's really happening, there'd be more people able to see, oh yeah, actually, let's move progressively forward.
Yeah, I almost agree with what you're saying 100%, right? And especially in terms of like the need to take action on climate change. But I think the way in which information is, because if you just like brought people like a scientific study, or had them watch the Al Gore documentary, from like that would not change a lot of minds.
Yeah.
You have to again meet people where they're at, again
True.
be pragmatic with your language, don't necessarily be concerned with wording things 100% perfectly or whatever, and talk to them how they understand it. Code switch and talk to them how they would understand it. And that's not always going to work. I think that has to be reinforced by stuff, and community is a great way to do that. So if you back up like authentic communication, or communication that at least speaks to people in the way that they talk, and back that up with a robust community, and fun, and a vision for the future, then I think people's minds would be changed. But you need that other stuff too, not just the facts.
Yeah, absolutely, or we would not be where we are.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, an inconvenient truth definitely did not sweep across the masses to,
I still see conservatives making fun of it online, and it's like, you got to be kidding me! It's 2026. Like,
yeah, that was way back. Yeah, that's really true. And I know sometimes like, just because I love studying American history, and I love looking at, I still don't want to stop believing that fundamentally there are people who want to keep making, I don't know why it says more perfect union. I don't believe in perfection, but like a better union.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Sometimes I hear myself talking about like probably language that need to code switch.
Maybe.
It's not
Yeah.
necessarily building community. Like, what about like the principles that this, very flawed country who's nearly committed, genocide of
Mm-hmm.
so many different indigenous tribes and nations here, so many flaws and so many harms that I don't even need to list, that listeners are aware of. But we got to keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
But like, tell me more. Like, what's the language? What's the language? How could I use the podcast platform to, or extend it more into other areas?
Ooh, I think that like it depends on where you want to extend it, right? If you want to extend it into the kind of political streaming, universe that Progressive Victory kind of draws upon, then I would recommend paying attention to the tone in which they talk about politics. I think tone is one of the biggest dividers in between like that kind of tuned in, quote unquote, younger, very online crowd. That is again defining a lot of our politics, unfortunately. Sometimes, well, like I would say, fortunately, in terms of the progressives, but I'm seeing right wingers who are also in that sphere also like changing the language of our vice president sometimes. I'm like, oh, okay. But if you want to appeal to them and get more involved with them, pay attention to the tone in which even progressives in that sphere are talking about politics and adopt that tone, or adopt, make connections in that sphere already, and then form like a link. Say like, hey, I respect you. You're on my platform. Thank you for coming here. We aren't going to sound the same, right? You don't have to become that, but like form that connection, code switch a little bit, learn to, kind of like, I don't know, like mingle and like have plans together and be like, here's our vision. Here's, what I mean? Have a conversation. I think that would be the best way to make inroads there.
Great. I love having different generations on the show, and it's helpful to live in a college town and and meet younger people who do want to use their voices and do take advantage of being here.
Mm-hmm.
So what about, like, are you connected to, like, we hear about this online community of like young lonely men, and usually it's and I do think that the extreme right has tapped into taken advantage of people's vulnerability, and kind of found people who felt like they didn't belong anywhere and said, hey, come here. But the here was actually inviting people to be quite destructive. Do you have, again, to make a sweeping generalization, there's a lot of people who are on the right, un-Republican, and rational and more moderate and not MAGA. So I clearly see there's a continuum on the left as well as on the right. So, but how do you access? I don't know. Are you, let's see, accessible or visible to people who might be like sort of stuck in an online world and just really don't know how to connect with people?
Yeah, I would say that Progressive Victory is kind of an antithesis to what happened with like, young lonely men in the 2020s, and even going back into the 2010s. I think that Progressive Victory saw, wait, why are all these like incels coming up, or like why is the alt-right surging? Well, it's because like when you go into certain like cultural spheres on the internet, certain communities where you're gonna like hop in discords and chat with people or be in comment sections, like sports was becoming dominated by the right. I think that like men's, like, I don't know, dating advice and stuff, that was clearly being, dominated by the right. And like, I don't know, hobbies, video games, a lot of that was being like dominated by the right, because there wasn't really a progressive movement that was like addressing it at all, or trying to adopt that same strategy. A lot of like progressive movements were either walled up in like very essentialist thinking that would not really accommodate the cultural location, or the cultural affect of those young lonely men, or they were just out of touch and unaware that this was going on at all, because they weren't really paying attention online. And then next thing you know, you get a huge surge of young men, especially young white men in the United States, who voted in Donald Trump in 2024, as well as like other, like, again, I would say neo-fascist figures in like Europe and South America throughout the 2020s. So Progressive Victory tries to capture that kind of like, I guess, pipeline and move it leftward instead of rightward. Instead of an alt-right pipeline, create like a left pipeline where your favorite streamer is now collaborating with this political org, just for maybe a one-off thing, but now you've heard of them. And then, hey, maybe you'll check it out. And, oh, look, it's a cool community. They don't just like obsess over politics. They like do like game nights, and they like like make fun of roast each other, and they like, and then all of a sudden, like that person is out of whatever rabbit hole is pushing them towards the right and is now pushing them towards the left. And I think that's really important. I think that model, if Progressive Victory continues to grow, amazing. And other orgs should also try to adopt it as well. This kind of adopting the things that pushed people towards the right in the 2020s, except pushing them towards the left. That doesn't mean making it 1-to-1, right? Because we are going to be advocating for different ethics and different strategies and stuff like that. But we can learn a thing or two about the importance of community and engaging hobbies and other stuff into political activism.
That sounds brilliant. I mean, really, that's been enormously missing. That sounds like a really significant missing piece. And I really appreciate how we drew that out, like explicitly, that the way you connected it to the pipeline. It's sort of like giving people options, like, hey, like, guess what? There's some leftward fun and people and ideas that you might really want to consider, but come have fun and see what you think.
Exactly. Yeah. A community.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, everybody needs community. Wow. Gosh, we just have like three more minutes, but I wanted to see if before I ask for your closing thought, I'm curious, do you have like any kind of like how organizationally, is there like a structure? Is there training? Do people, if people said, oh, wait, how do I like get involved? What's your advice?
Just in general, I would say just go outside and meet people. Join a hobby group. Like, even like for me, I got a lot of my political connections through chess club initially. So if you are into hiking, if you're into sewing, if you're into like, doing marathons, like join those groups and you will do that networking. You don't necessarily have to go out and join a political group as your first group if you aren't used to this kind of thing. If you are, though, there are plenty of like opportunities. Like Indivisible has been doing a great job with different projects throughout the United States. Like, they're cool. And obviously, if what I'm saying about Progressive Victory sounds interesting to you, you can join Progressive Victory at progress.win. I can post the link somewhere. I guess it's just this.
Progress.win.
Yes. Progressive Victory. But anyways, yeah, you could just look up Progressive Victory online and you will find the link to join their Discord. And again, they're mainly a Discord-based organization, so be prepared for that. You might have to download Discord if you don't have it yet. But yeah, just meet people. That's the big thing, is meet people and form connections, and those will be useful. Everything is political, but that also means that every connection you make can also be helpful in fighting the political challenges we face today.
And we face a lot. Okay, that's great for people to know. They can look it up and they can try to, if they want to download Discord and connect with Progressive Victory, or just go out and meet some people. I love that. That's really nice. That's really great advice. If we have like 30 seconds, do you have a 30-second closing word or phrase or thought?
Well, thank you so much for having me on. This is a super fun time. I'd love to chat again. And I don't know, meet people. And the face of politics is going to be built different in the future. And it already is built different. We're getting a lot of stuff done.
Yay. Thank you, Ryan Berilla. I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate how much you care about people and your encouragement to people to connect.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I want to thank our listeners and viewers. I want to thank our wonderful engineer, Rebel, and our producer, Dean Piper. And everybody tune in Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time and Talk4TV, or you can find me at my YouTube channel or w4cy.com. And may we all continue to have enriching conversations in diversity. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay.